A mysterious disappearance involving 5 young guys on a frigid February night continues to baffle investigators. There was no sign of them around, but their abandoned automobile had the engine running and the tank full. Months later, when the remains of one body were discovered, the terror was only intensified. Where did the 5 individuals from Yuba County go? Keeping reading will lead you to a story that is deeper, darker, and more tragic than you could ever think. It all started on the evening of February 24th, 1978. It was after a basketball game at Chico State University in Northern California that 5 friends, Gary Matias, Bill Sterling, Jack Madruga, Jack Hewitt, and Ted Weir, left the arena. Home was never in their future. After several days of searching, the Mercury Montego was located in an abandoned state in the heart of Plumas National Forest, miles from any road leading back to Yuba City. No flat tires, plenty of gas, no keys, and the doors would not lock were any of the problems that may have plagued the vehicle. The wilderness was covered with snow, and the nighttime lows were below freezing. Silence and frozen trees were all that was left of the 5 men. There were no footprints leading away and no tracks. Time slipped away. As a first horrifying revelation, it was made inside a distant Ted Weir's lifeless body, wrapped in sheets, was discovered in a Forest Service trailer around 20 miles away from the abandoned automobile. He had no shoes on, and his beard had grown long, indicating that he had survived for at least a few weeks. The trailer was empty, even though it contained food and supplies. Were his efforts in vain? Who were the other people? What had transpired to imprison these 5 men in one of California's most remote and uninhabited areas? Why, though, did just a single corpse emerge? The eerie truth behind the Yuba County 5 will be revealed tonight. Also, I guarantee that you will be left with more questions than answers when this novel concludes. 5 young men from Yuba City, California, were leading ordinary, hopeful lives before the tragedy, the haunting headlines, and the unsolved mysteries. Nobody knew who they were. They were unfazed. Just like any other group of people, these men had problems and aspirations. They were sons, brothers, and friends. The 25-year-old Gary Matias was the first. For a long time, Gary had battled schizophrenia. Due to a decline in his mental state, he was honorably discharged from the U.S. Army. Things were looking up, though, as of late. His symptoms were under control thanks to medication, and he was making progress toward re-establishing his life. He wished for a stable employment, enjoyed playing sports, and spent time with his pals. Jack Madruga, a 30-year-old, came next. Although he had never received a formal disability diagnosis, Jack's low IQ and frequent need for order and regularity helped him get through the day. His uncompromising independence was evident. Even though he had served in the U.S. Army and saved up for his dream car, a 1969 Mercury Montego in turquoise and white, with a lifetime of hard work. Jack safeguarded his pals at all times, was reliable, and kept to himself. The group's beating heart was 29-year-old Bill Sterling. He resided with his parents due to his developmental condition. Bill had a kind disposition, was quite devout, and enjoyed spending time at the library. His loved ones cherished him because of his real generosity. The Witt family lovingly cared for Jack, the youngest of 24 children, and he led a happy, innocent existence despite his learning handicap. When it came to spending time with his closest pals, Jack's excitement was as boundless as a child's. A man who enjoyed sports, nature, and belly laughs. Lastly, 32-year-old Ted Weir had a little intellectual handicap, but it never dampened his flamboyant attitude. He adored his time spent volunteering with the Special Olympics and was always willing to provide a hand. For hours on end, Ted and his buddies would watch and discuss basketball because of his infatuation with the sport. They were completely reliant on one another. They had an unadulterated connection, a true friendship based on mutual respect and devotion. In each other's eyes, they were brothers, not misfits. On weekends, Jack would gather snacks, hop in his Mercury Montego, and head to a basketball game or the movies, cheering one another on, looking out for each other, and sharing in inside jokes that no one else got were all ways they supported each other in ways that were invisible to those on the outside. The freedom they had won, the wise decisions they had taken, and the inherent decency they possessed were all sources of great pride for their family. There was no sign of irresponsibility or defiance on their part. Above all else, they were adored for being trustworthy and accountable. The 24th of February, 1978, was meant to be just another typical happy day. It was a joyous occasion for the five pals. About 50 miles north, at Chico State University, they planned to attend a collegiate basketball game. They had been practicing and fantasizing about their own Special Olympics basketball tournament for weeks, and now it was finally here, the night before the competition. The enthusiasm was palpable. Even the night before, Ted had meticulously folded his Gateway Gator basketball suit and set out on the floor. With the goal of taking home a medal, Bill had boasted to his family about the competition. There was an abundance of trust in them from their coaches and relatives. They set off in Jack's Mercury Montego together in the early evening, beaming with joy and optimism. Watching the game, getting food, and getting a good night's sleep before their big day were their plans. Out into the night they went, five companions on a journey that ought to have been uncomplicated, uninteresting, and easily forgotten. No quarrels, no indications of difficulty. But tragically, something went wrong. The misery that five families would endure for decades would start within a few hours. It all began with a night of carefree delights. Jack Witt, Gary Matias, Ted Wer, Jack Sterling, and Jack Madruga, together known as the Yuba County Five, boarded Jack's beloved 1969 Mercury Montego on February 24, 1978, and sped off to Chico, California. Their sole purpose was to attend the Chico State College basketball game. Motivating themselves, they went to their own Special Olympics event the following day. At about 10 p.m., the Chico State game came to a close. Then the group of five companions made a pit stop at B. As a snack, they picked up some Hostess pies, chocolate milk, soda, and candy bars from a nearby convenience store. They were very much on the store clerk's mind. They were upbeat, typical, and unremarkable. They departed the market and headed home in their car at about 10:30 p.m., and everyone seemed to agree on that. However, a catastrophe occurred. A state of fear ensued the moment the family's alarms went off the following morning upon discovering the lads still hadn't returned home. Unlike other teens, these adults didn't feel the need to party the night away. The guys here had developmental issues, but they still loved their routines. Their total non-appearance, no calls, no tournament, was totally out of character. Quickly, the hunt was launched. The location of their vehicle was quickly determined. A forest ranger found the Mercury Montego on a deserted, winding mountain road close to Plumas National Forest, some 70 miles northeast of Chico, on the wrong route back to Yuba City. The vehicle had been left unattended. Someone had rolled down one window and the doors were unlocked. Strangely, the car seemed to be in fine operating condition, even though the keys were missing from the inside. Even without snow, it was easily drivable back down the road. Nothing was taken. The vehicle was undamaged, and no indications of a struggle were found. The seats still had half-eaten food from their purchase. Why they ventured up this lonely mountain road was an instant and terrifying question. It was common knowledge that Jack Madruga detested being outside in the elements. Especially in the dead of winter, he had no desire to brave a dirt mountain road after dark. The fact that the dirt road leading from the spot where the automobile was discovered continued into the bush added further mystery. As the party dispersed from the vehicle and into the cold woods, they may have left behind footprints that matched their shoes. Nevertheless, these tracks would soon vanish under the weight of new snow, leaving behind few traces. Had they become disoriented? Were they enticed to leave the highway by someone? Had they, in a fit of terror, gotten out of the automobile and into the frigid night on foot? I didn't get it. The nighttime low was below freezing. They were unprepared for the harsh and strange terrain that lay ahead. The authorities were perplexed. In their panic, the families distributed leaflets, canvassed the neighborhood, and begged for information. Searchlights from hovering helicopters illuminated the seemingly unending, snow-covered tundra. The cold ground was scoured by search dogs in an effort to find the two guys who had gone missing. Dozens of volunteers slogged through deep snow and dense forest underbrush while yelling out the boys' names. The search teams endured days of sweltering heat and difficult terrain. Those few, faint footprints beside the deserted automobile were the only indication of what else was missing. No bodies, no clothes, no supplies. The 5 men seemed to have disappeared without a trace. The inspectors delved further. From Chico to the deserted dirt road, they went over every step again. The pasts of the guys were searching for any information that may shed light on their potential mountain expedition. But it all didn't add up. Outsiders, none of the lads were. The family vowed they would never knowingly risk the safety of the car in the middle of the brutal woods on a frigid February night, and they were unfamiliar with the rough terrain where the car was discovered. Strange clues started to surface, further complicating matters. There was a terrifying accusation from a local man. According to him, on the night the boys vanished, he noticed a group of individuals who might have been the ones the boys were describing hanging around the abandoned car. However, when asked for specifics, he became evasive. They eluded him as far as identification went. Could this have been a Yuba County 5 or a group of lost hikers? We had no way of knowing. Then the call from an unknown number arrived. A voice allegedly instructed the authorities to explore a specific area in order to locate the missing lads, and the police took this advice seriously. Curious but wary, the investigators pursued the clue, but to no avail. Still no progress, adding insult to injury. At the same time, rumors and whispers were circulating throughout Yuba County. There were reports that the lads had been abducted. Rumors of cults, drugs, or foul play circulated among others. A few even went so far as to say that Gary Matias, who had a history of schizophrenia, had a psychotic episode and put them in harm's way. Once again, though, proof of any of it was lacking. Investigators could only say with certainty that the Mercury Montego may have drove away from the scene. There was no jam. Only 25% of the gas tank was remaining. Strangest of all, the engine started right up when the police tested it. Everything was okay. There was no mechanical issue, no flat tires, etc. With that in mind, why give up on it? Why risk getting out of the car and into the dark snowstorm when you can stay put? All these possibilities plagued the investigators, but they never received any answers. As time passed, optimism started to wane. The families who had held fast to the hope that their boys would be found were now consumed by sorrow and questions that remained unanswered. Mothers who used to wait by the phone for updates now gazed out the window. Weary, battered, and without any treasure, the fathers who had gone out on the search groups made it home. Not until June 4th, 1978, did the truth emerge. Unsettlingly, a small party of motorcyclists venturing into Plumas National Forest's deep wilderness found an ancient Forest Service trailer. And within, a terrifying revelation. Among the 5 men that went missing was Ted Wer, whose body was found. Approximately 20 miles away from the abandoned car, a seemingly insurmountable distance to traverse in knee-deep snow and sub-zero weather, was where they could find the trailer. Investigators were taken aback not just by the location, but also by the peculiar and unsettling manner in which Ted had been located. Inside the trailer, on a bed, lay Ted's lifeless body. His shoulders and head were encased in a number of blankets that seemed to have been meticulously crafted for him. As he passed away, I did my best to console him and keep him warm. However, he was shoeless. The weather had taken its toll on his feet, leaving them blackened, frozen, and severely frostbitten. Adding to the unease, the trailer wasn't actually cut off for the rest of the world. Inside were a plethora of underused items, including canned food, a propane tank that could have heated and cooked, bulky winter clothes, and matches. After what seemed like an eternity inside the trailer, Ted eventually succumbed to the elements and famine, according to authorities' estimates. Almost half of his body weight had been lost. The length of his beard was a mute testament to the many lonely hours he had spent waiting for rescue that never came. Extra details that were concerning were there. It appeared as though the men had shattered a window in search of cover. On the other hand, why hadn't they cooked with the food? Why, instead of making use of what was available, had Ted and maybe others opted for gradual starvation? Something wasn't right. Outside the trailer, spread across the rough landscape, the detectives discovered even more horror as they continued their search. Animals had stripped the bones of Jack Hewitt, but dental records had positively identified him. His remains are found around 2 miles away. They discovered Bill Sterling's and Jack Madruga's clothing nearby, and then their skeletons not long after that. The bones were left exposed to the elements and animals for months as they lay scattered across the fields that had melted snow. It appeared that after getting out of the automobile, the gang had dispersed in search of refuge. Only Ted had reached the trailer, but he was surrounded by all the resources he needed to survive, but he died slowly and hopelessly anyway. Gary Matias, though, remained absent. His whereabouts remain a mystery. Astoundingly, his shoes were found inside the trailer, indicating that he had likely been there alive for a while. As far as anyone could tell, Gary had returned to the woods in search of aid, but he had never returned. Screams of desperation, terror, insanity, or survival arose from among the throng, according to some whispers. The secrets of the mountain were jealously guarded. Already broken by months of doubt, the families were about to face an even worse reality. They had endured pain because their sons had gone missing. They were really near to receiving salvation, yet it had slipped through their fingers. There are still a lot of unanswered mysteries about the body of Ted Wire. How come they hadn't eaten it? The propane hadn't been burned for heat, so why hadn't they? Why had they broken up instead of continuing their relationship? Worst of all, where had gone Gary Matias? Once a puzzling disappearance, the Yuba County 5 case has taken on a darker hue, evolving into an unresolved tragedy that continues to haunt those familiar with their story. After the bodies of 4 of the 5 men were discovered and Gary Matias remained missing, the world started to wonder what occurred that night. There was an official theory, and it was overly simplistic. When the men left the basketball game, they seemed to lose their bearings. They got out of the car and roamed aimlessly in the countryside after taking the wrong turn and driving into the mountains. They were bewildered, chilly, and scared. No one who knew them, though, bought into that notion. This group of men wasn't careless. They supported and sustained one another. Particularly revered was Jack Madruga's meticulous handling of his prized vehicle. On his own will, he would never have driven it up that perilous mountain route. Why didn't they just turn around if they were lost? Why venture 20 kilometers into a barren wilderness, over huge snow drifts, if you don't have a plan? Inside a trailer containing unopened supplies, authorities discovered Ted's body neatly wrapped in blankets. I didn't get it. A number of competing hypotheses emerged. It was rumored that there was foul play. That night, was it possible that someone dragged them off the road? Had some evildoer or gang enticed them to go so far into the mountains? A terrifying story surfaced. On the night the men vanished, an employee at a neighboring resort asserted that he had overheard some peculiar noise. In the jungle, he claimed to have seen headlights and heard whistling and yelling. But upon closer inspection, he found nothing. Were the lads yelling for aid because they were lost, or were they being pursued by some force? Word got around quickly. Some have speculated that the guys fled into the wilderness in a state of terror because they were afraid of an invisible danger. The Yuba County 5 had a reputation for being trusting and careful, though, as other people pointed out, unless they thought their lives were in imminent danger, they would not run without looking. Afterwards, more sinister plots emerged. The local population might have been involved, according to a few. People in the highlands weren't usually welcoming of strangers, and the area was rather secluded. Is it possible that the 5 men have unintentionally discovered something? An organized crime group? A clandestine enterprise tucked away in the forest? Or was it a more intimate matter? A man named Gary Matias came the next. His sudden departure added fuel to the fire of suspicion. Unlike the others, Gary had a history of schizophrenia, a mental disease that he had carefully managed with medicine and remained stable for years. There is speculation that Gary's psychotic episode was the catalyst that sent the others running into the woods. Some thought he might have outlasted everyone else and then vanished into the woods, maybe even finding a way to live off the grid. And again, Many who knew Gary quickly put that notion out of their minds when some dared to think, did Gary have something to do with the deaths of his friends? Gary cared deeply for his companions. A violent act toward them has never been demonstrated by him. He had hoped to earn a Special Olympics medal in the basketball event, just like everyone else. Still, the tragedy's central mystery, his absence, remains unanswered. Nothing seemed to suit the facts. Not just one hypothesis. Why, instead of turning back, did they keep going farther into the mountains if they were lost? What could have scared them so greatly that they would run into the woods without any preparation? Why did nobody seem to be fighting or aggressive if there's foul play? Neither the vehicle nor the trailer contained any signs of criminal activity, including fingerprints or blood. With the passing of each season, the bewildering and tragic situation seemed even more distant. Once upon a time, in a seemingly regular California town called Yuba County, there was one of the most bizarre and terrible true crime mysteries that the United States has ever seen. The chilly night of February 1978 seems like a lifetime ago. Still, the mystery surrounding the Yuba County Five has not been fully resolved and continues to plague the community. No fresh information regarding the disappearance, subsequent discovery, and tragic circumstances of Gary Matias, Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, Jack Hewitt, and Ted Ware in the Plumas National Forest has been uncovered, despite numerous search expeditions, hundreds of leads, and interviews. Recovered items have undergone modern forensic testing, including DNA analysis, re-examination of witness testimony, and ground-penetrating radar in strategic areas. However, the central enigma remains unsolved. For all these years, the five men's families have longed for some sort of resolution. Like Ted Weir's mom, some people visit the deserted trailer on their anniversary, putting fresh flowers at the door in the hopes of finding some kind of sign. Some people, like the younger sister of Gary Matias, have joined groups online whose sole purpose is to solve cold cases. Members share images of themselves as they mature and even sort through satellite images. A small number of people have grieved in private and have chosen to hold vigils or memorials in silence, accepting that answers may never come. Yuba City will never be the same after the disappearance. People here still whisper each other's theories. Did someone make a terrible navigational mistake, have a mental episode, or was anything more afoot? A horrific crime that took advantage of five innocent young men? Newspapers in the area publish retrospectives once a year. New interviews bring the case back into focus on podcasts. Fans of true crime make the pilgrimage to the Aspen Road bus stop, where they put flowers and mementos. But the same intransigent facts keep popping up, disproving every theory. The trailer's undamaged supplies, the abandoned car with the keys still in it, and the discovery of Gary Matias's shoes inside, with no trace of him anywhere. All that remains are unanswered questions since the physical evidence won't fit together. Why did they risk abandoning a functional vehicle for an icy wilderness adventure? There were potentially life-saving supplies in that trailer. Why didn't Ted and the others use them? Where did Gary Matias go from here? Is he gone for good after making his solo escape? Time continues to reverberate with these unsolved mysteries. Even now, the Yuba County Five case is far from solved. They show how vulnerable human plans are in the face of uncertainty. Natural and enigmatic powers that are merciless. For as long as people are curious about the Yuba County Five, their narrative will enthrall, perplex, and terrify those who ask, what really happened that night? Leave a comment with your theories. Like and subscribe if you're interested in mysteries like this. The search for answers is sometimes the most interesting part of any story. Ultimately, the Yuba County Five will always be a mystery, a jigsaw with pieces that might never fit together. Even after more than 4 decades, no clear solution has been found. Had they only become disoriented in the dark, stricken by a terrible blunder in their navigation and the harsh winter wilderness? Did something sinister step in instead? Into hopelessness, drawn from a place of safety by an invisible hand. The pain of unresolved concerns lingers on in their families' hearts. There are many who continue to harbor the dream that Gary Matias's true location will be made public at some point in the future. Some have discovered solace in embracing the enigma, paying tribute not to the manner of death, but to the lives and connections shared by their departed loved ones. Gary, Jack Madruga, Bill, Jack Hewitt, and Ted are 5 men who shared laughter, dreams, and the inevitable disappearance. In addition to being teammates, friends, and brothers, they were also sons. They just wanted to fit in, win some races, and be accepted for who they were. Despite the tragic ending to their narrative, their memory lives on in the silence of the pines and the sound of the distant road in the mountains. Everything may change in a second, and the quest for truth is eternal, as their departure shows us. The wilderness may keep its mysteries hidden, yet their tale will live on via our memories. Where did the 5 individuals from Yuba County disappear to? Feel free to chime in with your theories and ideas down below. If you were touched by this tale, we ask that you like, subscribe, and give it a bell so that their memory will be remembered and perhaps someone can finally get the answers they deserve.